So the first question we're going to start with, and thank you for voting on which ones you felt were most compelling and you wanted to hear the answers to. The first one is about a specific area of consulting. And the question is, what are some common pitfalls that consultants encounter when working with clients to address internal communications issues? And a follow-on connected question is, when encountering these pitfalls, how have you dealt with them?
Well, I think for me, internal communications are always difficult when you're a consultant because you don't have control over the delivery mechanisms. So I think really one of the things you have to do is really, when you're a consultant, is understand what you can influence and what you can't, which I think is what Tom is saying. And be sure to step up and drive the message that is key to the success of what you're trying to accomplish. And thank you very much, Jerry, for the plug. But the whole principle of honesty, and honesty. Don't bullshit your people. Treat them like adults. That's really one of the things that happens is we treat, as a consultant, we go in and companies want to treat employees like kids, when in fact the principles that we really go and strive for is treat them like adults and they'll act like adults. You treat them like kids, they'll act like kids. So anything that you can do to influence that piece is really, to me, more important as a consultant than worrying a lot of times about what is the actual. I would hire somebody like Jerry Fletcher to write the message, but is the message delivering what we really want?
I know in a situation I had when I was working with a client where one of the employees came to me and wanted to totally trash the owner, and I'm sure you guys have run into that before. For me, I wanted them to be clear who was basically paying me, if that makes sense. I want them to know who the client is here, and that I feel that I cannot, on the one hand, I didn't put it this way, but be taking money from my client and having her badmouth my client without my having to share it. So whatever they wanted to disclose, as long as they were aware that it was probably going to get back to the boss, because I'm not going to, if they don't want to deal with it directly, which I think is the way to do it, that I'm going to be the one that's going to have to convey the information. Or I would encourage them to just stop talking about it now if they prefer to and go on to something else. But my obligation and my code of ethics and the IMC code of ethics, I hope, align in the fact that if someone is maligning in some way someone else, and I become privy to that I almost am complicit if I take that information in and don't in some way share it back. And it worked out just fine in this situation because the person thanked me because they thought I was buds. Sometimes they think you're their buds because you call them by their first name and you just, but this is a very professional profession, and I think we have to hold to that.
What did you do with the information?
The information, basically what I did was I did talk to the client, but I didn't attribute it so much to this individual. You know how they say separate ideas from people? And it wasn't one of these that went on for a long time. Eventually she did confront, and I worked with her on how to deal with the owner, right. And that worked out to be a really good thing.
Right. Next question. Any interesting methods you've used to encourage clients to make the right decision or to take actions required to succeed in a project?
When I present options, I present at least 2, if not 3, and the pros and cons of each. There's an innate finding in my head that says they really know their business better than I do, so it's their decision and I can support it, but I have to really articulate very clearly, here's some pros and cons to each of those decisions. But it's really their company and they get to make the decision. Case in point, even as an SAP consultant in the Department of Legislative Services in Maryland, quite interesting. We had a person advise them that they needed a separate server box for all the testing. And he said, no, we don't. And Bud said it for 3 weeks straight. And Wing just refused. So 3 months later, when Wing came back in and said, oh my gosh, we need another box, Bud just looked at him and he goes, yeah, I told you that. And Wing said, you should have made me do it. And he said, no, you're the client. You make those decisions. And so he rested that responsibility on them. So I always like to have here's the reason why I suggest this, so pros and cons, 2 if not 3 options, and let them make the decision.
Yeah.
Recently working with a client, an attorney, he was telling me about a client of his who was disgruntled about timing and a situation, and this client attorney was complaining to me at length about it, and I asked him, what would happen if this client, who's a significant client of the firm, were to call your managing partner and complain, and the managing partner weren't prepared, wasn't privy to this, to what's going on here. And the attorney said, oh. And so the client that I was working with directly, the task we identified for this attorney was to call the managing partner, talk with the managing partner about what was going on, and it resulted in them collaborating to decide how they were going to handle it. But that was a case where just a simple question, one simple question, what would happen if this client were to call the managing partner and the managing partner wasn't prepared? Was kind of a turning point.
Yes, fast forwarding the movie a little bit. Yeah.
And that attorney hadn't even thought of that. I mean, he was so immersed in this problem with his client, he hadn't thought about what he needed to do to go forward and prepare his managing partner.
What is your favorite practice management software? For managing things like billing, contacts, follow-up campaigns, invoicing, anything that you may use. Do you have a tool that you like or multiple tools?
Salesforce.com.
Salesforce.com.
No, it doesn't do that.
What does it do for you?
CRM, so it's contacts, emails, next steps, follow-ups, tracks the sales funnel, kind of everything up to the sale, and then I kick it over to QuickBooks for the rest.
Great.
There's by the way, if you do the 60-day free trial and then you don't pay, they'll give you a 1-user license for free forever.
Wow, really?
So you've heard. They
I was
never
gonna say,
advertise.
I had that for over a year.
And then I hired somebody and upgraded to a 2C. But I had the $0 up front. It was, mostly functional. You don't have the advanced stuff in it.
But enough to handle the needs you had. And they turned you into a spokesmodel. Anybody else have a tool they use other than Salesforce.com?
I'm very happy with ACT for many, many years. ACT, the Client Manager Program.
For contact management?
I'll second that.
Okay.
And I'll add another one. It's a company called AWeber that allows you to set up multiple task orientations that will let you start a campaign, and it has autoresponders when people respond to your website, and you can put a string of autoresponders together along with messages that go on ad infinitum, so that when people respond, you can do branched kinds of things with it. So that, for instance, let's say someone comes to my website and asks for an offer that I have today. They immediately get a response that says, "Thank you so much for your response, we really appreciate it. Here's where to go to get that download." They get the download. Set it up, so a week later, I go back to them and say, "I know you downloaded this, I just want to know if you had a chance to take a look at it or not. Let me know yes or no, and we may have some other questions, or if you have other questions, please let me know." They respond. If they respond yes, then I say, "Great, did you find anything that you really needed in there? Is there something that's helpful to you?" In other words, I can do branching strings as long as I like. And the key here is that I don't have to do it more than once. So that every client that comes through gets that kind of information. That's one piece of software that does it at a reasonable cost. If you want the Cadillac that does that, it's a thing called Infusion software.
Here's a question about proposals. If your client has not specified the content of a project proposal, what do you include as basic content in a project proposal?
In my opinion, if the client has not specified the outcomes in the proposal, you're not ready to submit. you shouldn't submit the proposal should simply be a confirmation of the conversations that you've had and the deliverables that you're gonna make and the objectives that you're going to achieve. And that's it. And so if they haven't specified that, you're not ready to submit. You're simply throwing something against the wall and hoping it sticks.
What does the new normal really mean to consultants?
Essentially, it's someone trying to make up something and then define it to get a little bit of traction. It's a PR operation rather than a reality check. The new normal doesn't mean anything to anybody until it's defined by the person that's using it in the first place.
And so for you, there's not been a redefinition, a new normal?
There is no new normal.
For you?
No.
Would the question asker like to reveal him or herself at this point?
And I agree with Jerry because I've heard it in the media and I've read it, and what does it mean? And what does it mean to us? It seems like it's going to become one of those new cliches. And it's a lot of it.
It's written by people that don't know what they're talking about.
Thank you very much.
What is it?
Patricia?
Well, one of the things about, that I'm seeing a lot about the new normal is that companies are going to be looking more and more to move ahead without more staff. They're going to figure out even more ways to increase productivity with the staff that they have. I mean, there's this huge emphasis on not hiring, right? I mean, we read about this all the time. There's even a huge emphasis about not hiring temporary employees. So, I mean, that should be, in fact, good news for consultants who can go in and even more carefully look for ways to improve the efficiency of organizations with what they have, and to not encourage them just to add more staff, but to look for ways to cut out the inefficiencies and to look for value adds that are not going to be staff. I think that's a new normal that we're going to be facing as consultants. So that's probably good news if you're consultants in those fields. So I think it has some emphasis and some meaning in some fields that we should think about as consultants. Maybe not in marketing, as Jerry was saying. I mean, we still have to market, and there's probably not any new normal in the way of marketing. But there's definitely going to be a new normal in the way companies operate.
I think there was a contribution from, yes? Was that just?
Kathy's
had
her
two
Kathy,
Kathy's.
I know you have
Well,
to
I
get
just-
this out.
It's like, well, I'm taking lessons from Rick on being contrarian. It's disagreed. I think that there is a new normal in marketing. I think there are I mean, certainly there's essential practices that we all have to, and our clients need in terms of outreach. But I think that the new normal is that old paradigms and old ways of doing things just don't always get it done. And people are making buying decisions differently, they're making hiring decisions differently, and that's why consultants can be such value right now to help people process and think through and come to a new place of understanding, because hopefully all of us are trying to keep our ear to the ground about what's coming and working with thought leaders so that we can actually bring some fresh perspective, because they don't have the time to do all that. So to me, that's kind of the new normal. It's, I mean, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we did business one way, we did a lot of things one way that had been done for quite a while. It's just not that way anymore.